Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of RichesTalk, where we explore the many phases of life's riches, and be it personal growth or professional achievements, or inspiring stories from extraordinary individuals. So I'm your host, Jeffrey, and today I'm thrilled to introduce our special guest, Alistair Burton. So Alistair is an executive leader with a remarkable track record in technology transformation, having made significant impact in the finance, higher education, and gaming sector. His expertise in navigating complex digital landscapes and driving strategic change has positioned him as a thought leader in the industry. In 2023, Alistair took his passion to self-development and insightful conversation to a new platform with his podcast, Life Lesson, which we will talk about this in our episode this time. This show is built on the fascinating premise that we become the average of the 5 people we spend most time with. So Alistair's podcast aims to enrich listeners' lives by introducing them to high-performing individuals who share their invaluable lessons and experiences. So today we got the opportunity to ask Alistair about what his insight of these high-performing individuals so that we can learn and apply in our personal and professional life. Hi, without further ado, so let's welcome Alistair Burton to RichesTalk. Alistair, how are you?
Very good. It's great to be here, and that was a very kind introduction. But I'll take it. I'm happy with that.
I think it's very factual and very it's just reality. I didn't talk too high of you, but I think what you've done in the last year has been impressive, especially in LinkedIn. You have interviewed so many great speakers, and one of them is also our mutual friend Andy Fell. I think he's very inspiring as well. And I think you had a good book selling roadshow with him, isn't it, in Brisbane?
Quite recently he had a What Winners Do event in Brisbane, and he invited me there to speak, and I talked a little bit about the podcast and some of the lessons that I'd got from it at that event. But yeah, Andy puts on a really good event, and I like a lot of what he does. It's highly practical. I've adopted a lot of the lessons that I've got from him from that podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I get to know you, because of I saw Andy's post sharing your interview with him. And being surrounded with high-performing people, by success-driven and action-driven people, I just feel motivated in my daily life and in my profession as well. Alistair, could you share a bit about your background? Because I just shared briefly about what you do, but can you share about yourself and what led you to specialize in the technology transformation, especially in this fifth industrial technology changes, with all this AI, and all this process upgrade. What have you witnessed over the past years?
An awful lot, and nobody starts in a career in technology transformation, but a large proportion do start a career in technology. And I'm going back a long time, and it was more through happenstance than anything else that I ended up in technology. When I left university, I had 2 particular job offers on the table, a marketing one and a technology one, and they were both in Middlesbrough in the northeast of England. And one of them had a nicer office but less of a salary, and one of them had a not quite as nice office and a better salary. And I opted for the better salary, and I started at British Steel as a COBOL programmer. So that was my beginning in technology. And a lot of people in technology, they'll go up different routes, and as they move into leadership, they might come through a technical route, they might come through an operations route, they might come through a project management route. I went through a project management route, which is more on the delivery of change, and the evolution from the delivery of change is the transformation of either how a business operation runs or how technology itself runs. So through that, doing bigger projects and different roles throughout my career, I've ended up specializing in delivery of change and delivery of transformation.
I think that's very important. That reminds me, when I first graduated from uni in 2010, I joined ANZ Bank, and at that time they started this Asian Pacific strategy, and they start offshore a lot of processing teams in financial planning industry, and offshore that to India and to Philippines, and a lot of people get redundant at that time. And I remember there's a team called change team. I think what they do is they come in and then they see which process needs to be replaced, and then what can be done at a cheaper cost at that time. That's like 14 years ago, 13 years ago. So at that time, all the business, they applied change. I think the only thing that doesn't change is everything is changing every day.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah.
They say the only constant is change, and it's the biggest cliche in the book, but it's 100% accurate.
And what do you see, in that changing environment, especially in this fast changing environment? A lot of people are faced with redundancy. A lot of business owner is facing, out of the game because of the AI coming to the game. What do you think is the right attitude or response to these changes, from your experience?
And is that from the perspective of an organization or the perspective of an individual?
I think from the both business owner and employee who are, working in the role that are facing with change. For example, a lot of coding specialists, they are getting out of the job. What can they do in this era, or what's the opportunities?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that any individual can do in any role, whether it be technology based or any corporate role, is to expect that the world won't stay the same, and to expect that then helps you understand that you can't just remain static. You can't keep doing the same thing every day and expecting that the world's going to remain the same, because it's just not going to. But by realizing that, it then gives you the motivation to go, well, how can I keep my skills current, or how can I advance, or how can I diversify? So then when change comes, I'm actually in a position to influence it, ride the wave of it, and find myself in a new position rather than be left behind by the change. So you've just got to accept that it's going to happen. There's very few jobs now where you're not going to be subject to change. Everything's going to have an impact. The world keeps moving on, whether you like it or not.
Yes, absolutely. Tell us about your passion. What has led you from your technology transformation, which is your profession, to the life lesson podcast, which is very interesting and fascinating, that you get into people's life and get other people to share their life with more people. How does it align with your personal and professional goals?
One of the things that I'm really interested in is growth. And possibly about 4 years ago, I was in a position in my life where I'd gone through a bit of personal change. I'd gone through some career change as well. And certain things had made that a lot easier for me in terms of people that I was associating with, media that I was consuming, good, healthy media that was allowing me to educate myself and grow and develop. And through consuming that, I actually worked out that I had a real interest in it, and it felt like it was something I could do. I had this idea, and I thought, I get a lot of value from either getting help from other people or consuming media. And I thought, well, how can I, if I'm getting value from it, how can I replicate that and give the value to someone else? And I dabbled in the idea of being a coach and those kind of things. And I thought, maybe I haven't done enough to credibly stand up and say, I'm going to coach you to a new tomorrow because of everything that I've learned. But I felt that I had the ability to collate and curate the lessons that other people had and take them to a new audience. And I felt like there was something that I could do. So I had this itch to scratch around the production of a podcast. And it did take over 3 years to take that idea to reality, and that's something that we could talk about. But eventually I did it, and I found that I really enjoyed it. So over the past year, I've talked to around 50 people, and that's 50 new opportunities to learn from people. It's 50 people that are now in my network that I've got the ability to call on. And it's 50 opportunities to pass those lessons on to other people, 50 opportunities to add value to other people as well. So I'd very much class it as a hobby, but it's something I get a lot of value from. And even if nobody in the world ever listened to the conversations that I had, that I'd still get a lot of value because I'm meeting someone new and I'm getting to a level of depth over an hour and an hour and a half, and I think hour 45 minutes is perhaps the longest one, where I'm really getting to learn what makes them tick and how they view the world and what I might be able to replicate myself.
I think that's very similar motivation that I've got for developing Hippo Talk and also RichesTalk, is to really learn through myself as well as sharing that learning experience with my audience, which is similar to you. I think I'm more interested in the process. You said it took you 3 years from the idea to the implementation. In that 3 years, what has gone through your mind? I believe in our audience, there are a lot of people who who have some dream, who have some goals, ideas that they have in their mind, but never implemented, never realized it in their life, and there are things that's stopping them. And both you and I know what's stopping us, all that doubt, fear, whatever that is. And I think I'm more interested, and I think the value is, how can we, what are stopping us? How can we overcome those things to actually put it into action?
I think if the fear of doing something new is greater than the fear of just staying as you are, then you're going to remain in this stasis and you're not going to do something. And whenever you're going to do something public facing, you're immediately offering yourself up for criticism, offering yourself up for challenge, and you're inevitably going to show more of yourself than you would in any other interaction that you have with someone outside of your immediate friends and family. And that creates a level of fear going, am I ready for this? Do I want to do this? And what I found is it was a procrastination that went for well over 3 years. And there was a couple of occasions where I tried to break it during this time, and I tried to approach what would be some soft and easy guests, friends or colleagues, and I was being too easy on myself. And as it happens, when I approached them, they weren't interested, and it never came to something. But eventually the opportunity was so large that it actually kick-started me and went beyond the level of fear that I had, because an opportunity fell into my lap. And it was Andy Fell that we've referenced before, and he'd written a book, and he posted on LinkedIn saying, hey LinkedIn, does anybody know of any podcasts, any opportunities to publicize my new book? I've written it, I want to get this message out. And one thing I am is a bit of an opportunist, and I sent Andy a message and said, well, it's funny you should ask, because I'm in the process of launching a podcast and I'd love to have you on as a guest. And so then Andy said yes, and then it became very real for me, because Andy, being a credible player in financial services, knew a lot of people that I knew. So then following through and doing a good job had a lot of reputational impact. So now it was more risky not to go forward with it than stay the same. So that was the kickstart that made me do it. And then once I'd done it once, it was easy to do it again and again and again. And as it happened, I'd arranged Andy as the first guest. He was the second one that I recorded, but then I just went on from there.
Absolutely. I think there's a saying, 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And the first step is the hardest. When you actually committed and determined and really desiring to see your idea come into reality. And I believe that took a lot of courage of you just saying, overcoming the fears. Also, may I say that you also find passion and find the enjoyment of doing it, of talking to people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done, 50 podcasts.
Yeah, 100%. You've got to enjoy it, because sometimes you're recording late at night, you're squeezing it in between other things that you're doing. It's very easy to go, actually, that's too hard, I'm too busy, now is not a time to do it. So if to make it work consistently over a year, it's got to be good for you. And it really has been. I've met so many amazing people, and I've got lessons from all of them. Some of them that you'd really expect, and also lessons from people that you perhaps wouldn't expect.
Absolutely. So out of these 50 interviewees, you must have met people from all walks of life, and people with different passion, profession, different success stories. Can you give us some takeaway or insights of a guest that on your podcast that has profound impacted you?
Yeah, and there's probably two that I would bring out that have impacted me to the extent that I've adopted a lot of what I've learned from them. And over the 50 that I've done, 70% are possibly corporate and 30% not. I'm interested in talking to.
Absolutely. So out of these 50 interviewers, you must have met people from all walks of life, and people with different passion, profession, different success stories. Can you give us some takeaway or insights of a guest that on your podcast that has profound impacted you?
Yeah, and there's probably two that I would bring out that have impacted me to the extent that I've adopted a lot of what I've learned from them. And over the 50 that I've done, 70% are possibly corporate and 30% not. I'm interested in talking to anyone that interests me, anyone that's got an interesting story. Perhaps maybe someone I wouldn't normally meet, a story I might not normally get exposure to. I've got a lot of corporate ones on because my network's in that space, so it's easier to get guests that way. But I've had a lot of interesting conversations, and we'll reference him again, Andy Fell. What I like about him is a lot of his career resonated with me. So he worked in the same kinds of organizations, he knew some of the people that I knew. And what I found really useful with Andy's conversation was he has a lot of practical things that he does in terms of his tapping into his peak performance that are very easy to replicate. His 4M routine around, the movement in the morning, the mind cleansing, the meditation, the Mozart time, all of that stuff is so easy to replicate, and I'll find myself on the train on the way into work and I've got my pad out in front of me and I'm adopting a lot of the practices that he's got. So I've taken that from that conversation and I've applied it, day in, day out. So that was one that was really good. But I also spent an hour or so talking to a guy called Mohit Rao, who originally was an immigrant into Australia.
Yeah.
And he wanted to work in sports and he had a few different career junctures. But one of the things he was really interested in was development. So he set himself a mission to read 100 books, which he's done. And you think, reading 100 books, yeah, that's more than some people do. But what's so special about it? What's special about reading those 100 books for him is that he's taken the lessons from every single one of them. He's adopted them into his own life. He's developed a really strong reading practice. He's got a whole system in terms of pulling the value out of those books and doing something with it. But more so, he's taken what he's learned and he's dedicated himself to passing that knowledge on to other people, predominantly immigrants into Australia, to help them find their place, find their value, find jobs, navigate through whatever the systems are in a new country. So he's just, someone off his own back. He's taken the opportunity to learn. He's developed a system around it, and he's actively pushing that value back out to a community. And his LinkedIn following has grown and grown and grown because of the messages that he's got. So that was a great conversation for me. And all the way through, I was kind of nodding and thinking about what I should do. And reading doesn't come natural to me in terms of that reading practice of non-fiction. And it's still not slick, but it's something that I always think about and I'm always trying to adopt, and the library's growing and I'm just trying to get into that rhythm that Mohit has taught me about being able to read and take the value from those books.
How long did he take to finish 100 books reading? In a year or?
No, it was more than a year. I think that if memory serves, it was more like two or three. But during that time, and he was at about 98 books when I spoke to him, he'd read some of them multiple occasions. So he'd gone back and he said, I'll get to 100 and then I'll get to 200 and presumably I'll get to 500 in the future.
Wow.
But he wasn't rushing it, and he was going back and he was rereading them, and he had this whole system of different colours for highlighting different messages and what he would do with them in the book.
Wow, that's amazing. I need to listen to that podcast, because when we're busy, we don't have too much time to read books. But I also trying to read like a daily books with like 356 days. Each day has some reading, and then just finish that one, tick the box. I just find that's probably easier for me to follow the system. That's probably the system he's been using as well, just as regularly break down each section to finish it. But I think I'm very keen to listen to that podcast. So in your conversation with all these high-performing individuals, have you found any common traits or habits that all of them possess?
Yeah, and you've referenced it already. It's action.
Action.
It's action. It's taking that first step. Whatever it is that they wanted to achieve,
Yeah.
they didn't let the fear of doing it stand in their way. They had an idea and they just took action. And what I've come to learn is, your first step, generally speaking for most people, is going to be a shoddy quality step. It's not going to go the way you want. It's not necessarily going to be the best quality. It's not going to be your finest work. But unless you take that first step, you can never take the second, and you can never take the third, and you'll never ever get better from the idea that you had in your head. All these people stumbled, they took a first step, but then they went on from there. I spoke to a lady who was the first woman to circumnavigate Antarctica solo on a sailing boat, and then she subsequently went back and is now the fastest to have done it. And she wasn't a born sailor, and she wasn't born into it, but she decided she wanted to do it, and then she found herself working in this area because she took the chance. And then very shortly after, she decided she wanted to sail around the world, around Antarctica, and she had to raise the money. And with very little experience of fundraising, she just decided to do things, get out there, email people, do messages. And then she ended up riding a bicycle from Sydney back to the Sunshine Coast, and she ended up doing it solo because it felt to her like the best way to raise some money. And it was just that idea, that faith in themselves and doing something just to see where it led. Every single person that I've spoken to, they all took a chance, they all did something, and they were prepared to fail to allow them to succeed.
Well, as you say, the first step is not the final step. The first step is just the beginning. It's not failure. It's not loser. It's the beginning to success. It's the beginning to a great work. Nothing is born perfect. It needs to be growing into that shape, or needs to be adjust, changing. As we initially was talking about the change. So we're changing all the time. I think iron sharpens iron. People encourages people, changes people. What you just shared with me and with my audience, just that overcoming fear, take action. It's just so important in a person's ability to make changes. Because we speak to clients every day, and we talk about different wealth principles, wealth strategies. But it all takes them to take action. A lot of people, they think about growing rich, they think about doing something, but they never change. They're just happy to stay where they are. And I think that's the main issue. People not happy with their life and not doing something about it. That's the stupid thing, you can ever think of. You're eating something you don't like, but you keep eating it. You don't say, look, can I change it? Can I, cook something different? Can I buy a different thing? So I think the responsibility and the obligation, it all lies in us as ourselves to take the first step and to be responsible to continually take the second and the third step to adjust our life to the ideal position where we want to be. So thank you for your sharing. A lot of listeners, what I found is they listen to the lesson, they hear all these sharings, but how can they actually apply it to their life? They may think of us talk about different stories, but a lot of people, they don't relate to it. Is there some step that we can do from your experience that you've learned? You talk about Andy's 4M. Do you have a technique that you listen and then you apply as an example?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think what's worked with me and what hopefully works to people that enjoy my podcast is it's a bit of a drip feed effect. If you hear enough stories of people that have done things, then some of it might stick and might provide you the inspiration to try something yourself. If you've got a particular idea or an itch that you needed to scratch, because not all of my guests are Olympic gold medalists. Some of them are, but not all of them. Not all of them have circumnavigated Antarctica. So some of them have, but not all of them. Some of them are just people just like you and me that have achieved amazing things by taking action and doing them. So my hope is that through those conversations, and there'll be a degree of inspiration that will cause someone to do it. And that's you're the average of the 5 people that you spend your most time with. So the premise there is surround yourself with high achieving, successful, inspirational people, and that's great if you've got access to them. But not everyone has access to them all the time. What I try to do is bring them in virtually and say, here's someone inspirational. They can be part of your circle for an hour. Listen, enjoy, absorb, and hopefully some of that will stick and up-level you.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. That is the goal of, I think the goal of this episode is to surround yourself with high performing, with positive mindset, with can-do attitude people. Because if we go back to the environment where people complain, have excuses, and ask you to do, the things that are bad for your life, and we can never change. I think that environment we are in is the key for personal growth. And as you mentioned, not everyone has opportunity to, closely work together with, people like Andy Fell or with other Olympic gold medal winners, or with people who are entrepreneur. And through podcast, through virtual, through online, we can get to anyone we want. We can keep all those successful people around us, so that we can be influenced by them. And once our mindset has been cleansed or has been upgraded, then our action will come. So I think that your idea and the tip for us to surround us, which we have choice, we do have choice. It's up to us what we want to do with our life. But at the end of the day, it comes back to their hand, whether they want to click the button to follow you or to listen 1 hour to our conversation, or watch entertainment videos, short videos on their mobile. So time just flies, and especially at this year of the day, people don't just, they don't take drugs, but they get addicted to so many things other than drugs, other than alcohol. They get addicted to so many other things that stops them from growing. What's your view? What's your view on that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a world full of distractions, and we're all susceptible to it. Or I can talk for myself, and I am susceptible to it. It's really easy to be distracted. And, the trick is just to not waste your time. Have something that you're interested in, you're passionate about, you're pursuing. Doesn't matter what it is, but I think the biggest lesson that I've had, and, it works for me some of the time, not all of the time, but I know when I'm at my best, and it's when I am fully giving myself to the task at hand, whatever it might be. If I'm there 100%, and I'm kind of in the moment and not worrying about the before or the after or what happens, but just doing my best in the moment, that's when I am my best. And if I can maintain that kind of approach and that level of performance, that's great. If I allow myself to worry about the before and after or get distracted during, you're not getting the best out of me. So it's something I'm aware of. Like any human, you don't get it right all of the time, but understanding is the first part of it, because then you know where you're going right or wrong. Understanding it, analysing it, not beating yourself up about it, but knowing when you're doing well or you're not doing well. Having that recognition is the beginning. Then you can do something about it. I remember a time when I would have been blind to that, and I wouldn't have known, and I wouldn't have been able to analyse my own performance, and I wouldn't have known if I was hitting the mark or not hitting the mark. So developing that self-awareness is the first part.
Fantastic. Love what you do what you love, get educated, and then through what you're doing, empower other people. That reminds me of my 3E principle, which I always share wherever I go. I think you applying that, that principle is everyone can apply it, and everyone follow it to achieve growth. That's from my understanding. And from my perspective, what you're doing is exactly helping yourself grow, at the same time help other people grow as well. So what are your future goals for the Life Lesson podcast and also your professional career? Because I think you have stopped for a period that you're focusing on your career. Do you plan to restart your podcast again? And or do you want to move to podcast as a full-time profession, or as a as a new venture? How do you balance that profession and passion?
Wouldn't it be nice to do podcasting full time? But I can't say that anytime soon. I think the important thing from a podcasting perspective is enjoy it and take the value from it, regardless of however many people listen and whatever you do with it, because then you're getting the value and it's worthwhile doing it. I've definitely slowed down on production. I used to be recording and publishing at least one a week, which I haven't done for the past 12 weeks now. In a new role, that new role deserves a lot of my time. I think that's only right and proper, and I'm putting a lot of effort into it. But there'll be a time where I'll start recording again, and whether it's along the same line, the same format, or something different, I'm not sure. But I certainly enjoy the conversation, so I will absolutely do more of them in the future.
Fantastic. I think that will be beneficial for more people to access, people from your network. I remember the first time we connected on LinkedIn, I said, podcast is a great way to connect people. And I think that is what I mean is through podcast, you get to understand the other people's life. You get to communicate with another person in the world from a different background, different location. And I just think that's amazing in this time of year that we can make it happen. We can do so many things which is otherwise not possible maybe 20 years ago, you know what I mean? And how do you define success both for you personally and professionally?
The answer I give you now is probably different to an answer I would give you when I was 20 years old. But now it's growth, both professionally and personally. If I'm learning more, doing more, achieving more, becoming more than I am today, then that's success to me. Because any individual is capable of so much more than they realise. If I'm growing and becoming better at the things I do and learning to do things that I don't do right now, that's success. That's how I judge it now. 20 years ago it might have been different. It might have been about things and titles and status, but it's not about that. It's about growth for me now.
Can't agree more with you. Well, everyone has different definition of success, but that's also my philosophy, which is growth mindset. So success is a road always under construction, and I believe by growing, you can achieve things in your life, but that's the fruit or the result of your personal growth, of your mental, spiritual growth. Okay, so you've already answered my next question. What do you consider the most valuable riches in your life, and how do they influence your work and podcast? I believe that would be your personal growth.
Personal growth, that's a rich. I think my health is a personal rich that I don't want to lose, and my family also would be a personal rich that I don't want to lose. Those things together, I think that's what life's about for me. If I'm learning more, doing more, if I'm able to do these things because I've got the health, and if I've got the love and support of the family, then that's a happy day.
That's amazing. We never spoke this before, but that's amazing. It just aligned with my 8 dimension of life, which I first time I share on my podcast, which is spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and then familial with your family, vocational with your career, social is your role in the society, and financial. I leave financial in the end because what I believe is finance is influenced by the first 7 dimensions of your life. If you can be healthy mentally, spiritually, emotionally, if you have harmonious good social responsibility, to play in the community, the finance will follow. It absolutely will follow. But people have different definition of success. People will put a number in their success, but at the end of the day, they find that's not the most valuable thing in their life. If they lose their health, if they lose their family, if they lose good personal branding, so that is more valuable than just the money, I think. It was very great time spending with you just for the past half an hour also. I think I like to have you back as a guest, just to talk about more stories you heard, just talk about more topics. But I definitely look forward for you to coming back to the podcast, and look forward to hearing more of your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a few weeks since I've been behind the microphone. It's interesting being on the other side of the desk. So no, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on. It's been a great chat.
No, thank you for your time. It's my pleasure, and I hope I can also encourage you to come back.
Absolutely.
Well, how do you feel to be on the other side of the interview?
It's much more stressful being on the other side, I think.
Because it's easy to ask questions, but you gotta know what to share to with value to benefit the listener. I think that's the hardest thing. But it's easy for you if you have the story, have the points and the valuable insights. It will be easy for you to share. So that's why you need to share more. Probably become a public speaker somewhere.
Well, it's a muscle you need to develop, isn't it? Because when you have a conversation with someone, no one's trying to trick you. They just want to know what you know. And the more you relax, the easier it is to get out what you know. So again, it's got to do that first step. You've got to do it. Be on the other side of the microphone at least once, and then you get better on the second and the third time. The
more you do it, the better you get. Practice makes perfect. So we just practice. Life is a practice.
It is every day.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alistair. So I'll end this podcast. I think thank you for your time. It's over 30 minutes. I tried to make it short because a lot of time people have trips, have other commitments. So probably not as long as your podcast, but I'll try to keep it around 30 minutes. So everyone, you can get back with your family. But thank you very much.
It's a good duration. No, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for this episode. I'll look forward to see you next episode. Thank you. Thank you very much.